Well, it's Monday and all of the documents are still there. Better safe than sorry, I guess. Hey guys, this is Jules with True Crime Reactions. Disclaimer. Everything stated in this video is my opinion and my opinion only. And just like everything else in these cases we discuss here on this channel, everything is alleged. Okay, so we've had some concern with the motions to suppress that were dropped by Bryan Kohberger's defense team because there's a lot of what seems to be very specific information that so far, up to date, has been really more stuff that gets filed under the gag order. So a lot of people thought that as of today, maybe the documents would be removed, changed out. But no, it's about 6 p.m. where I am now, and everything is still very much there. Now, it is also November the 18th. And for those who have been following along on us going through all of these documents, you know that today was the day that Ann Taylor stated that they were going to be personally handing into the court the other information that they have for this Franks motion and all of these motions to suppress. If anything is going to be available for us to look at, whether it be just the fact that something was submitted or anything else for that matter, it definitely is never going to show up for the same exact day that it is filed in this county. So we'll just see what happens throughout the week. Now, as I mentioned in the end of the Apple Warrant video, this is where I was going to start breaking the chronological order because I wanted to do all of the phone and iPhone and Apple and AT&T related search warrants and motions to suppress all in one to keep the theme. Now, instead of going through the arrest warrant information next as they have been filed, we're going to do the AT&T first warrant, the cell phone data, the pin trap trace device, and then do Google. And then we're going to go and do the person in Idaho, the person in Pennsylvania, the white Hyundai. We're going to do the arrest information at the 119 Lambsden statements. And then we're going to save the arrest warrant for last. We're going to save the best for last because that arrest warrant was the very first thing that started getting us asking a whole lot of questions. And in asking those questions, here we are today. We are 2 years deep. We have inhaled and just soaked up every detail that we can about this case. And at the end of the day, we have more questions than answers. And if they really had their man, if there was really just a very cut and dry, black and white way that this happened and went down, there wouldn't be so much secrecy. And I don't know if the secrecy is because Bryan Kohberger is truly innocent, which is the way that I still lean to this day because they have not proven anything to me yet, or if this is so secret because they're covering up their own mess. And that's the worst of the two. Now, I have my theories, but the only thing that matters is the actual truth, and we still have almost a year before we even get to trial. Trial is not going to be until August. Now, we have heard Ann Taylor's team mention something about maybe reinstating the speedy trial time frame. Hopefully that actually happens because it would be really great to actually get some facts out there because so far, as I said, it's nothing but questions. Now, there is a first AT&T warrant, but it's more of like a geofencing type warrant where they wanted like everyone that was using the towers between 3 and 5 a.m. It's not Bryan Kohberger specific. It's not Bryan Kohberger specific until December of 2023. And as you can see, this is right after they would have gotten Bryan Kohberger's name. So this one was done by Brett Payne. And what we've learned so far in all of the documents is that the feds went in and like subpoenaed the information, didn't do a legal technical warrant. And then after the federal grand jury failed, which is where I guess all of their subpoenaed information would have been needed, then they went in, Moscow PD went in and tried to redo the warrants for information they technically already had from the feds, but that was obtained illegally. That's how I'm understanding it so far, to try to clean up the mess because then they had to take it to a state grand jury. This is one of them that was done right after they got Bryan's name. So this one's actually rare because all of the rest of them that were like around May right before the grand jury. So this one would have been on 12/23. Got the information back same day too. They were quick with that one. And all it states here is nothing because all of this, they didn't want any information shown to us whatsoever. Then we go down to where they have more information, and this is where the judge actually signs off on what's going on here. And it states that they want information associated with the phone number, which this would be Bryan's phone number, between 12:12 at midnight and November 14th at midnight. And that they wanted all of the information for the subscriber, any email addresses, the call detail records, cell site information, location information, cloud data, all of it. Now, the next one is one that was done in March. I questioned this one whenever we first saw it because it didn't really make a lot of sense. If they already had done the warrant on the 23rd, a few days after they would have gotten Bryan's name from the feds, then I don't understand why'd you do another one 3 months or so after you already had him in custody and you already did the warrant. What about his information would have changed? Now, this was right before, this is about 2 months before the grand jury, but I'm not really quite sure on when the federal grand jury was. Now, this one was actually obtained on March 30th, and AT&T didn't get back for like 2 weeks. They didn't even get back to him until April the 20th. And again, information on this part is completely blanked out. So we go down here so that they want information from 1122 King Road in Moscow, Idaho, on or about November 13th, 2022, to include user account information, location data, and stored communications held by AT&T, described in further details as follows. Then it goes down and shows the time frames, the June 23rd, 2022 to August 1st of 2022. I don't really quite understand this. I never understood this because this would have been like the birth of the account that we knew about from the probable cause affidavit. But why August 1st of 2022? The crimes happened in November. So what's the point in this? They never, ever, ever explained that. Of course not, though, because, gag order. And then 2 numbers. Now, I mentioned yesterday that I knew about 2 numbers. I show you the portal from WSU that had 1 number for Bryan, and then how we had a completely separate number in the PCA. 1 number had a Pennsylvania area code, and 1 number had a Washington area code. Now, the number that was on the Pullman directory for him was the Pennsylvania area code. The one in the PCA is the Washington area code. So like I said, I don't know if he just never updated his WSU stuff. Maybe he didn't care enough to update it, and it was the information he had that they just migrated to his directory information whenever he got accepted and it ended up becoming a TA. Because it would have been whatever information was already on file. And I'm pretty sure that he would have had his approval to move to Washington before he ended up getting a Washington phone number. You know what I mean? So the reason for this date, and it doesn't end after the crime, it ends months before the crime, is strange as shit to me. And again, we can just assume that this is Bryan's because of the dates, because we do know that there was 2 different phone numbers. We have learned there was 2 different iCloud accounts. So some of you guys have mentioned how your iPads also have its own phone number, and we did hear now that there was an iPad at Kohberger's parents' house, but that they didn't take it into custody for evidence because it was in a common area. But then they also stated how they found a receipt in his car for an iPad. Now, if there was an account created back in 2016 and that's the iPad that he's had since he was a teenager and it's just hanging out in the living room, there wouldn't be a receipt for it in his car. That doesn't make sense. So I'm a little bit confused on the iPad thing, and I'm only mentioning it now in edit because so many of you have mentioned that to me. Most of you guys know that I'm not an iPhone person. I'm an Android person because they're simpler. The fact that your iPad has to have a phone number is freaking weird. Any Android tablet I've ever had, it's sign up with email only. They don't even do any of that phone number stuff. I mean, they do now for authenticating, but that's just crazy. That's just wild. So this could also honestly be his phone number and whatever number is associated with another Apple device, since it seems like these devices have separate phone numbers, which is just odd. So I guess it could be either. It could either be them looking up both numbers because through the search, they found the Pullman information and they see that it has a different phone number than what they have on file from that pullover, which is according to the PCA where they got the majority of his information after getting the name from the feds. Or it could be 2 separate devices with the newer Washington number being the main number and then one of the devices having the other one. And then maybe we haven't seen that one yet. Just edit thoughts. But according to what we read in that Apple warrant, there was only one of them that was active. So I don't really quite understand why he was even bothering, or why they were even bothering looking at the old one. But it could be because it was just now inactive whenever he got the new phone. I don't really quite know the point in that. And I agree with the defense team in that argument that them going back and looking for crap from back in 2016 is wild. It's like they knew that they couldn't find anything, but they needed to just bring up enough. It's going to be insane to think like what they're going to show that they found from 2016 on anything of his. So now we're going to get to the actual motion to suppress. Facts. On December 23, 2023, Corporal Payne of the Moscow Police Department requested a warrant to search the contents of Mr. Kohberger's AT&T account for information regarding his phone's whereabouts between November 12th of 2023 and November 14th of 2023, as well as messages and phone calls during that period. The affidavit for the warrant was signed by Corporal Payne. The basic facts Corporal Payne used to support the search are discussed in a separate motion for Frank's hearing, and that's also repetitive information. Okay. The affidavit requested all customer subscriber information, including all the addresses, the IMEIs, the ESNs, all the things, device purchase information, any email addresses associated. By the way, let me just pause for a second. I have people in my comments saying that the Wi-Fi Army owns or whatever email is associated with KOHBERGER. If somebody could actually point me to the proof of that, but just saying that's KOHBERGER's email, that's not telling me nothing. I mean, I need a source, guys. I can't just be like, okay, let's just talk about it. I need to know where it's coming from. I need it validated. I'm not seeing it. But they wanted all of this information. It's all the same information that's in the actual warrant that we just looked at. In the exhibit attached to the warrant, however, law enforcement indicates only wanting historical phone records between the hours of November 12th of 22 at midnight and November 14th, 2022 at midnight, as well as prospective phone records. Argument. Mr. Kohberger has a privacy interest in his AT&T account information protected by Article 1, Section 17 of the Idaho Constitution and by the Fourth Amendment. Now, they bring up the Fourth Amendment in the same arguments, really the same cases, because they all carry over no matter which motion to suppress they're talking about in this subject, because they are all pretty much about cell site records and illegally written warrants or vague warrants that weren't correct. In this matter, Corporal Payne specified in his request that the purpose for gathering the information from the AT&T record was to aid in determining the location of the 8458 phone and the white Elantra in efforts to determine whether the white Elantra is the same vehicle identified in the surveillance videos. Pursuant to Carpenter, which is one of the main cases that they'd have referenced like a lot, to the extent that information was being gathered, there should be an ED right there. I am so tired of this. For the movements of the vehicle, Mr. Kohberger has a privacy right protected by both the Fourth Amendment and Article 1, Section 17. Therefore, to collect the records law enforcement requested in this matter, it had to have a valid warrant. And that's the big argument with their sub-argument, is that the things were getting apparently subpoenaed and there was no actual factual warrants per protocols that are supposed to be followed. Number 2, the affidavit submitted in support of the application for the issued search warrant recklessly or intentionally omitted material information. And this is the exact same arguments in every single one when it comes to this point. So let's just look and see if we've got any nuggies in here. No, there's no specific information. It ends with the challenge pursuant to this section of the motion is separately laid out in Mr. Kohberger's motion for hearing under Frank's. Then we go to number 3. The search warrant fails to provide specific particularization of what law enforcement could search and seize in Mr. Kohberger's AT&T account. It goes and talks about the Fourth Amendment. This is pretty much the same one that they always use. Then it states that the warrant for Mr. Kohberger's AT&T account lacks appropriate particularization. It lists all of the following that could be found in the account. Could be found. Not the specifics of what they were really looking for with an exact target, but what could be found. all identifying information of the account holder, the creation of the account, the account's maintenance, all the call records, the text messages, MSN messages, and data activity, devices, historical and prospective locations. What the hell is a prospective location? Doesn't that mean like possible? Possible isn't fact. Possible isn't concrete. Any data now in the cloud. Okay. The warrant and the affidavit are not only all-encompassing, they are duplicative, often repeating things to be searched and seized, which is what I find funny in these motions to suppress, because so much of it is copy and pasted in duplicative. They're fighting duplicative with duplicative. It's freaking hilarious. It goes on to talk about how lots of jurisdictions have problems with such broad warrants because they state that the only limitation in this entire thing was that the property be related to the homicides. But it's not claiming exactly what they're looking for. They're looking for conversations between him and Kaylee, him and Ethan, him and somebody related to them. They're not specific, which I know it's probably sort of difficult to figure out what exactly you're supposed to be looking for, especially in a situation like this. But to just be like, I want any and everything ever, like, what are you supposed to be really looking at? Because whenever you're really getting that information, you're not sitting there sifting through every little anything. You're very specifically looking for something. They're very vague. They're not wrong in this. And then they go and talk about the cabinet case again. I mentioned that a lot in the last video. In the case at bar, law enforcement was certainly capable of greater specificity in both instances, but instead gave itself an overbroad mandate permitting it complete access to everything from Mr. Kohberger's phone. Now, I heard about this case in Georgia. I'm kind of glad that they mentioned it. I remember hearing about this. Recently in Georgia, their Supreme Court determined that a warrant for digital contents of a cell phone that permits the police to seize every bit of data is unconstitutionally lacking in particularization in a murder case like the one at bar. And I mean, honestly, they're supposed to be looking for something super specific, not just every little detail that has nothing to do with the case itself. And look, listen how simple. The Georgia Supreme Court went on to note that it would likely have upheld the warrant had it merely limited the search to digital evidence pertaining to the commission of the murder. But see, that's where I think about the way that the warrant is written out. And I'm like, okay, but they state the homicide at Moscow, the homicide at King Road. So just given what the Supreme Court said, it's almost as if that's the guideline that was followed, because even though it's not as specific as I guess they're wanting it to be, there are date ranges in it. 2 different sets of date ranges because there's 2 different warrants. To conclude, the warrant issued for Mr. Kohberger's AT&T account was unconstitutionally overbroad. Law enforcement had the ability to be more specific both as to the content and the category of the data it sought, and it chose not to be specific because what it wanted and what it got was a general warrant. Therefore, everything found in the search of the AT&T account must be suppressed. But why only the first one, Anne? Yeah, that's me asking that question. Why only the first one? That bothers me because if the entire point is that it's fruit of the poisonous tree, then why are we not getting rid of both of them? Why are we not fighting to get rid of both of them? The one that they're not arguing is the strange dates of June 23rd through August the 1st. And the one that they are arguing, the one that they want to suppress, would be the one that was done for the actual time of the crime, November 12th through November 14th. So if the entire point is that it's all fruit of the poisonous tree, why are we only arguing the first AT&T warrant? Okay. I'll ask all the questions. You guys should not be shocked one bit. The next one states, the affidavit submitted in support of the application for the issued search warrant included information that must be excised. And then it started talking about the violations to the Constitution, and all information in the affidavit was gathered because of law enforcement's unconstitutional use of IGG. Okay, but so was the other one. So was the other one. Mr. Kohberger has argued in a separate motion that the genetic genealogy investigation in this matter was done in violation. See, this is the same thing. Okay, here we go. Conclusion. Mr. Kohberger requests this court suppress all evidence obtained by police via the warrant for his AT&T phone records. But there's 2 warrants. 2. As explained above, this warrant lacked probable cause as written, given its heavy reliance on conclusions reached by law enforcement without the details necessary for the magistrate to draw its own conclusions, and because the warrant omitted exculpatory information and information that put into question the reliability of the facts upon which it relies, and finally because the affidavit and warrant do not specify what data could be searched and seized, all in violation of the 4th Amendment in Article 1, Section 17. Well, that's the end of that one. And yeah, I'm not going to sit here and not ask that question. I want to know why, if the entire fight is because the DNA for the IgG was obtained illegally and they believe that his DNA was planted, why are we only arguing the AT&T warrant that's asking for information for the actual time frame of the crime and not arguing both of them? Because aren't they both pieces of fruit from a poisonous tree that is rotten and needs to be thrown away? Aren't they both? But then again, this is where I'm still like, what's happening? Because now I feel like the argument is just strange because their expert, Cy is coming into court and on oath claiming that the data like this that he has seen so far is exculpatory to Bryan. So if it's exculpatory, why do you want to get rid of it? And if you only want to get rid of it to keep to principle, then why aren't you arguing both of them? Those are my questions, but I want to know what you guys are thinking and questioning down in the comments. The next one that we are going to be going over will be the cell phone data itself. So let's see what they got from these 2 warrants that they also want suppressed. But I also feel like if they're going to try to suppress the AT&T warrants, wouldn't that also mean all the data from those, like all the data information from those warrants, and that would be the cell phone data? We shall see, but again, let me know what you guys think down in the comments. If you like the way that I present this information and give my opinion, please don't forget to leave a like on the way out. Subscribe to the channel if you were not subscribed already, and please don't forget to make sure that your notification bell is set to all so you don't miss any of my rants, reviews, reactions, updates, or deep dives. See y'all.